Let's shift to the next topic, really focusing on, discussing that or having that conversation with your parents around their finances and their wealth. First, let's kick it off with the big question is, why do people have trouble, having this discussion? Because even when we talk to our clients that have living parents, not a lot of them had this discussion.
A lot of people feel awkward or uncomfortable about talking about money, period.
Yeah.
Now, when you are the child talking to your parents about something like this, that's kind of a role reversal in a lot of ways. And that can, make things kind of awkward too. So you're thinking about your own life, potentially even one day you're passing away, and that's not something that people really like to dwell on all that much.
But, the reality is that having transparency in this conversation, with your loved ones can help even reduce a lot of stress. Those are things that, and create that transparency. The other part of that we focus on too, and I think we see a lot, is that there could be a little bit of fear, fear of revealing too much information, just based on, the wealth that they may have accumulated, that it might create a ripple effect around just the knowing where the finances are.
There are certainly situations where children are actually in a better financial situation than their parents are. And that can be something that people don't necessarily want to, put out on the table.
I think embarrassment is probably a better word there. Just, not being in maybe a strong financial position where we'll talk about, why that could be important to even know that in advance for the children too. But that's we do see that quite a bit. So let's take a look at some of the kind of core topics that we typically suggest in that first conversation, or at least to work towards, especially as you look at the list here. First, understanding the beneficiaries. These are separate designations that are in place for retirement plans or even life insurance policies. Then next, taking a look at wills and or trusts. These are documents that are going to really govern a lot of the taxable assets or any property that they own, and also name who's going to be the successor trustee if they have trust in place, but also looking at the ultimate distribution of those assets and how that might be governed as well. And then powers of attorneys, super important to make sure they're regularly updated and making sure that who's named in those is not only the right person, but also that they're comfortable with making those decisions. That's what I highlighted earlier. If you're named as a healthcare power of attorney in there and you're not comfortable making those decisions, then you might want to suggest someone else or have your parents think about someone who is going to be able to act on your parents' wishes going forward. But again, this is related to any healthcare or any property, which is specific to any financial assets or real estate assets that you have.
I mean, we're talking a lot about documents too.
Right.
It's important that people know where these documents are located in case you need to access them, whether it's electronic versions, knowing how to access a password protected document in some cases, or even as simple as, hey, my trust is in my filing cabinet, the key is in the drawer.
Right.
Things like that.
Yeah, we call it the red file a lot, where it has all these important documents, maybe some passwords or important items you want your loved ones to find afterwards. But at the end of the day, someone needs to know where that is.
Right.
And that's part of this discussion, to make sure that that's revealed and at least updated on a regular basis.
Exactly. There are also long-term care considerations that a lot of people potentially need to deal with. So whether or not your parents have long-term care policies, it's a really critical conversation to have to understand, for instance, if they don't have a policy, how might those costs be covered?
Exactly.
Whether maybe your parents have the assets that could pay for this expensive care. It's very expensive in a lot of ways, but there are so many situations where parents don't have the assets, and it could potentially be their children who need to care for them. So knowing how that can shake out is critical. Just to talk about legacy planning too, is understanding what's important to your parents, how would they ultimately like their assets to be distributed? This is a conversation oftentimes involving charity or potentially different organizations that are important to them, and that has the potential to be a really fulfilling conversation. These conversations don't always have to be scary. This could be an opportunity to develop an even closer relationship with your parents. This might end up being a really eye-opening and inspirational conversation, and so we encourage you to place some importance on this.
Yeah. So now that I'm ready to have this conversation, Carrie, where do I start?
I think the first place to start, the best place to really start any conversation, is asking your parents, are you ready for this conversation? Are you open to talking about this with me? The answer could be, thank you. I'm really glad that you decided to muster up the courage and ask me about this, because it's been weighing on my mind and I'd love to have this open conversation. Or it might go the opposite of that. Your parents might not be ready for this. It's like we've been talking about, it's a heavy conversation in a lot of ways. This conversation should really be started with question. Instead of approaching your parents saying, these things are all really, really important. We need to start on this long to-do list yesterday. Maybe you can approach this as, hey, mom and dad, curious if this thought has occurred to you before. Have you done any work on planning for these questions that we're all thinking about, but have you put pen to paper and made a substantial plan at this point? Do you have any other partners, whether you've engaged with estate planning attorneys? Do you have a financial advisor? Do you work with a tax professional? These are things that you don't have to necessarily approach this conversation with, I have all the answers. You've been my parent all this time, but right now I'm going to take this opportunity to parent you.
Right.
Just ask and approach this from a partnership opportunity versus, creating a very fun to-do list.
And this is something that you do not have to do by yourself. If you have siblings, it's always recommended to coming to this discussion together.
Right.
You never want anyone to be left out feeling left out in that way. Those are also the approach of how we helped other clients too, is just helping to build a structure around that discussion with their parents, depending on what they might generally know about their finances, what they might know about their overall income situation. Just general conversations can help consult to address that. But certainly if they're open to it, that's where you don't have to be attacking, it doesn't have to be aggressive. It can really just be coming from a good place, because at the end of the day, if you are aware, it just creates so much more efficiencies and better outcomes from a conversation standpoint. That concludes our conversation here today. Thank you for joining us, Carrie. As always, if you have questions, please reach out, or if you'd like to see some topics down the road related to any wealth planning item, reach out to anyone here at the Private Wealth team, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.
Thanks.